Hello, dear friends from the Mexican Wine Guide. I have the pleasure to be with Eileen and Phil from Benacaba Winery. This winery is very special because it's located in Valle de Guadalupe and it's run from these two guys that are here. Eileen, how are you? Phil, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you too, Arturo. Thank you very much for inviting us and for all you've done over the years for Mexican wines in general and the Valle de Guadalupe in particular. You've been a huge advocate since before anybody even heard of wines from the region.
Thank you very much. That's the purpose of the Mexican Wine Guide, to invite our American friends to visit Mexico and to try the wines that we in Mexico are producing, especially the wines that Phil and Eileen are doing in this wonderful Benacaba winery. Phil and Eileen, why don't you explain us a little bit about Benacaba?
Okay, sure, with great pleasure. So I'm going to make this kind of brief, but it is a bit of a long story. So Phil and I arrived here in the Guadalupe Valley 18 years ago, and we were told that it was a place that grew wonderful grapes. It was very unknown, so unknown in fact that when we came here we were asking people in Ensenada, which is less than 8 miles away, if they could tell us where it was, and nobody knew what we were talking about. But eventually we did find it and fall in love with it and found the property that was more than any dream that we ever had. And I think for many years, people always imagined that we were very brave, but the truth is that everything that we've done has happened incrementally. If somebody had said to us all those years ago that we would have a hotel, 2 restaurants, a line of organic lavender products, and well-known, internationally recognized winery, we never would have believed it. But I guess fate was on our side. We found it, fell in love with it, put an offer in. Well, actually didn't put an offer in. The guy told us how much it was. We said, okay. And that was it. So that was how the story started for us. But when we arrived here, there were 19 wineries in total. And just to put some perspective on that, there are over 200 now. I don't know. I've lost count with how many. But it was a very small place. There were no hotels. There was 1 restaurant here in the valley, which was Laja, another one in Ensenada, which was Manzanilla, both of which still exist and been going for 20 years and have maintained innovative methods and extraordinary standard and quality in all that time. So it's a very different place than when we first came. Some things better, some things perhaps not better, depending on what your point of view is. But it's grown exponentially. We have probably more than 1,000 hotel rooms in the valley now. And as I said, when we came here, actually I didn't say that. When we came here, there was 1 place to stay, which was Adobe Guadalupe. They had 6 rooms. And in fact, it was Don and True Miller, the owners of Adobe, who encouraged us to come and open a bed and breakfast and make wines. And as for restaurants, we opened the 2nd restaurant. The first one was Laja. The second one was ours, which was Corazón de Tierra. And then within another 3 years, there were probably 50 restaurants, and now there must be 100 restaurants, and of extraordinary quality as well. So the region has, in this very short time, become world-renowned for not only excellent wines, but an interesting and wonderful place to visit for enoturism. A gastronomic hub like no other. Mexican cuisine is just really so important throughout the world now, which of course has helped the wine sales as well, because the food and the wine go hand in hand. So we came and started a very little bed and breakfast, 6 rooms, that we thought probably no one would ever come to, but we opened it anyway, and from the first day that we opened, we were full.
Excuse me for interrupting you, Eileen, but I don't think it's just bread and breakfast. I think that Benacaba Hotel, I can say, it's a luxury hotel.
Well, thank you for that. And I guess that what we try and be, rather than luxury, I would say bespoke. So there is rusticness about it, because basically we're in the middle of the country, but there is an elegance about it as well. And it's, I don't know, for me, it's just a dream place. So the emphasis was always on comfort. And if one translates luxury to have everything that you can have, that's always been our goal, to make sure that everybody was able to have as fulfilling and relaxing stay here as humanly possible, with lots of staff per guest, to make sure that your every whim was fulfilled in as far as possible, realizing that we are in the middle of nowhere.
I will correct myself, and I would like to say cozy. Your place is very cozy. I think that's the perfect word that describes Benacaba place. And it's very nice and cozy to sit with Eileen and with Phil and try all those wines that Phil is producing. How about the wines? What do you think about Mexican wines, Phil? What is your opinion?
Well, I must say that I do love them, and I love to make Mexican wines. We're very lucky in this country in that we have wonderful grapes that growing here in various parts of the country, both table grapes and wine grapes. Of course, my interest is mainly in the grapes for making wine. Not only are we lucky that they're available, Eileen and I can grow really good grapes, but we have a very limited amount of water on this small ranch that we have here. And we buy quite a lot of the grapes that I use for making wine. We buy from friends in the area. They're all Mexican grapes. They're all from this area. And they're wonderful. And because there are no laws here to stipulate what you must plant and where, and what you can do with it in terms of winemaking, I have an incredible freedom to do what I want, which, if you know me, you'll know.
Like an artist is like Phil can produce anything, and he does a lot of different labels and a lot of different coupage, and I think everybody should visit Benacaba and try with Phil in the cozy living room that they have, especially Phil's wines. So you really got in love with Mexico, Eileen and Phil, not only in Baja California and Valle de Guadalupe, but also with the Mexican wines.
This is true.
The best and luckiest thing that ever happened to us was a chance encounter with a friend of Phil's who told us about this place. And it's been the best thing that ever happened to us. We feel blessed and lucky to be here every day, because it's not just that the grapes are wonderful, and as Phil said, there's all of this opportunity to experiment with world-class grapes that you don't get in other regions in the world. But also the topography is just absolutely beautiful. Surrounded by hills, close to the ocean, beautiful sea, but wonderful people. And I would say that the thing that we love most about Mexico is the heart of the Mexican people. They are warm and welcoming and kind and fun-loving, and have definitely rocked our worlds, because we're very kind of not conservative. We've never been conservative, but reserved.
No way, my friends. I think last time that I visit Eileen and Phil in the Benacaba winery, we stayed the whole afternoon trying one label and a second label and a third label, and suddenly it was dark at night, and Eileen and Phil invited me to one of the rooms. I think it was on the first floor. Wonderful. The decorations of the room, the view from the room is spectacular. And the winery is down. The hotel is on the top of the hill, and then the winery is on the lower side of the hill. It's made like a boat. It's made like a sail with the proa and popa and the steerboard, and oh, I forgot the other name. It's steerboard, board, you know, and the front and the back of the.
Yeah.
Correct me, please. Okay, and really, my friends, it's a very good experience to go to Benacaba and try the wines. And you know, while we are talking about wines, I always would like to drink wine when I talk about wine. It's like the French. When the French eat, they love to talk about the food when they are eating, so the food gets a better taste. So, dear Phil, you sent me a Phil's blend and a mezcla especial. Which one would you like to taste?
Well, I'm tasting Phil's blend. That's the one that we have in front of. We are tasting that one.
Okay, let's talk about these Phil blends and talk about your wines, dear Phil.
I will. In general, if we're talking about my white wines, the red wines, the rosés in between, and several other different kinds of wines that we make, some of them are made from our own grapes. And as I mentioned before, others are made from grapes which we buy from our friends who have vineyards in this area. I like to do that. As it happens, I can't grow more grapes where we live because of the lack of water I mentioned before. But I really like to buy from different places. For instance, in the case of this red wine that we're drinking now, Phil's Blend, which is made of equal quantities of 3 different grapes, Cabernet Sauvignon, Nebbiolo, and Syrah. Eileen and I have Cabernet Sauvignon and Syrah growing here, but we also buy a lot more of those grapes. Nebbiolo we don't have at all. I never used to use Nebbiolo, partly because it's the most expensive, almost the most expensive grape around here if you're buying it. But one day years ago, Juan, who works here and makes his own wine with us, he gave me a half-ton of Nebbiolo grapes that he had access to and wasn't going to use. And I started to make Nebbiolo, and I really like it. I don't make many wines out of it, but I really do like it. Though the 3 grapes that are in this, nowadays I always have them in the barrels. You see behind me, I have barrels of Cabernet Sauvignon, and if you can see it, Mourvèdre at the top, that we grow here. I make many barrels of slightly different wines. If we just think about the Cabernet Sauvignon, which is in this blend, all of the Cabernet Sauvignon barrels that I make are slightly different in flavor. It's my process, starting from the grapes that I use. If I have Cabernet Sauvignon from my own ranch, from our ranch here, and we do, it's going to taste slightly different from a Cabernet Sauvignon from a different part of this valley. And especially slightly different from, let's say, Cabernet Sauvignon from the mountains, the Valley of Ojos Negros, 1,000 feet higher than here, I think. Or if we go further south, it's often a little bit hotter, down in the valleys of San Vicente, Santo Tomas, Ejido Uruapan. And I can also choose to buy grapes from the sandy valley bottoms or the slightly rockier or much rockier valley sides. And I keep, when I receive those grapes, I keep them separate. I use slightly different processes in every tank that I have, and all of our tanks here are small. Really what I'm doing is, I only realized it during this last year, I think, but I'm copying a process I learned, or a part of the process, when I went to the little Escuelita, where Hugo da Costa, the most renowned winemaker in Mexico, where he gives classes. And more than 15 years ago, I went to those classes, and there, each student made 1 or 2 tanks of wine, or half a tank. We shared them to save the cost, assuming that the wine that we were making was going to be rubbish. No one wants to waste a lot of money on that kind of wine. And so I was in an environment where many people were learning and making very, very small quantities of wine, and then each person bottling that small quantity for themselves. What we do here is...
Excuse me, Phil. I just remember for 18 years ago, you was and then just making 1 barrel of wine, and now you are producing more than 4,000 bottles. That's
Yes.
an amazing increase of the production.
Yes, so 40 to 45,000 is what we make now. We got lucky. I only make wine that Eileen and I are going to like. At least that's the intention. But we got lucky and we can sell it as well. And when I was at the little school, the Escuelita, what I learned was that each person that had, let's say, all the people around me at the end of the harvest season had tanks of Cabernet Sauvignon, because that's usually the last grape to be harvested here. That's the way it reacts to the climate. And I would taste the wines that each person was making. Of course, you have permission to do that in a little school. It's the way to learn. And I realized that the grapes from different valleys produced different wines. The same grape from the different parts of the valley, low down or up on the mountainside, produce different wines. The same grape from the same area, from the same ranch, using different temperature control or different yeasts. You can buy yeast. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Depends on the wine. Each of these things makes a slightly different wine. During the year, I'm making lots of these different wines. And instead of, as at the school, each wine belonging to a different person, here they pretty much all belong to me and Eileen. And we can decide what to do with them. We don't have to bottle just one tank. And so I can choose where each barrel goes. I choose exactly which of the Cabernet Sauvignon barrels go into this, which of the Nebbiolo barrels, and which of the Syrah barrels. And if I might continue for just a couple of minutes on this.
So you say that you are making the wines respecting the terroir, the Mexican terroir, the specific terroir from Baja California?
Baja California terroir, not just from our ranch, although we do make wines which are only from our own organic grapes on this ranch. But because I buy a lot grapes from many different places, I am able to represent the terroir of this area, including usually 5 different valleys, which are very close to us here. The furthest one is 2 hours drive by car. Most of them are about 45 minutes or 1 hour from here, something like that.
Here being the Guadalupe Valley.
Yes, here being the Guadalupe Valley, and we're in the center of that valley. During the winemaking process, I tend to have most of my red wine in barrels, almost all of them French barrels. I tend to have them for just over a year. Here, you see some behind me. These are all resting for a year. A process is happening which involves the flavors within the wine changing and an exchange of flavors with the barrel and the wine. Well, not quite an exchange. Usually it's flavors that come out of the barrel into the wine. I'm not so interested in those that leave the wine and go into the barrel. During that process, every couple of weeks, every 3 weeks, maybe every 4 in the winter, I have to taste all of the barrels to make sure things are going well. And especially towards the end of the year, or the 13 or 15 months or more that the wine spends in the barrel, towards the end of that process, while I'm tasting to check for quality, I'm also interested in what each barrel tastes like. And during that time, let's say after 6 months, I might decide I want that Cabernet Sauvignon barrel, and I want to blend it with that Nebbiolo and that Syrah over in the corner. But 4 weeks later, I might be thinking, wait a minute, not that Syrah barrel, but another one. And in fact, I might actually, during the process, suddenly think, wait a minute, we should involve Grenache in this. Less Nebbiolo, more Grenache. And to cut the story a little bit shorter, as the months go on, where not just me, but Juan, who works with me, Glenda, sometimes Eileen, although she doesn't like to taste too much, not when the wine is very young and tastes like medicine or worse. And the people who sell the wine, our team who sell the wine here, Glenda Galarza is in charge of that. I like everyone, if they're available, to be doing this tasting. And we speak about how the blend that we're thinking of now relates to one that we thought of 3 months ago. And it might be at the end of the year or year and a half or whatever, we actually have very different blends in mind than we did at the beginning. It changes, sometimes quite quickly, sometimes it's a slow change, and all of a sudden we're taken by surprise because we realize we were heading in the wrong direction. Well, this is one of the blends, Phil's blend. It's one of the blends which we made like that, where I probably started off thinking of Tempranillo and Cabernet Sauvignon, but it ended up as Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Nebbiolo.
So we can expect that every time and every year your wines taste different.
Yes, they do.
With the same quality, but different, expressing the terroir, expressing the harvest, if the harvest was good or if the harvest was best, or like this year, like 2020 harvest is looking like one of the best in the last 10 years.
Very, very good.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
we can expect that Benacaba wines harvested this year, 2020, we should buy a lot of cases of this one. And I'm sorry, I said before 4,000 cases, 4,000 12-bottle cases, almost 45,000 bottles that Benacaba Winery is producing. Is that correct?
Yes, it's something like that for sure. It's a little bit different every year.
So, excuse me, Aline, please.
I was just going to say that I think that as much as the wine is an expression of the terroir, it's at least as importantly an expression of the year, of the climate of the year, of the, because that so affects the grapes. And the idea is not to make a wine that's like Coca-Cola, so that every year, every bottle tastes exactly the same. It's what you're doing is helping the grapes of a particular year become the best expression of themselves. And so that varies from year to year. The terrain, the terroir is always the same terroir, but the climatic conditions are huge, big influences on how the final wine turns out.
Yes. Especially when you make very small quantities of wine.
Okay, this Phil's blend that we are not trying, how many bottles did you produce, and where do you sell them, Phil? Where can our friends from the Mexican Wine Guide find your wines? Of course, visiting Benacaba Winery, but can they find your wines in the US?
Yes. Well, this wine in particular is interesting. This is very small quantity. So actually, it's a lot more than the first year that he made it. And I think that's why this one was called Phil's Blend, because it was one of the ones that he made. And when he tasted it, he absolutely adored it. And as there was very little, it was called Phil's Blend because he didn't really want anybody else to have it but him. So in following years, we've made more.
No, Phil, you cannot do that. Everybody should try your wines, not only Phil. I think that you have to give us all the opportunity to try your wines.
Well, sorry, if I could just interrupt for a moment. That's why we now have black label wines. Our others were white label. And these black label wines are ones that we used to make in very small quantities. And now we're making a little bit more, and we do sell them.
So I think the idea is that the wines that were really tiny experiments, which is something that Phil does on a regular basis, it's what keeps winemaking so interesting for him. And it's a huge luxury to be able to do that here, one of the only places in the world with the quality of grapes that we have that enables you to do that. But this wine in particular, it was probably just the equivalent of one barrel. And so having loved it so much, we decided to put that into a limited edition range. And then we identified a couple of other blends that we thought would be an interesting addition to create another range, which is this black label range. And I think that consists of Phil's Blend, Mezcla Especial, which I believe is the wine that Phil made for Cosme, Enrique Olvera's restaurant in New York. And they change every year what we make for them. And so the first year was the Mezcla Especial, which was just called Cosme. It was labeled with their label. And we were very excited when they changed, because it meant that we could then use that for our own label wine. So there's Mezcla Especial, Phil's blend, as well as the Reserva, which is what Phil was talking about, which is our estate bottle wines made specifically and exclusively from our grapes. And all of our grapes, as is everything that we have here, are all organic. And the process that we have is sometimes natural and sometimes more traditional, although the way that Phil makes his traditional wines, there isn't that much of a difference between purely natural wines and his traditional wines, because he tends to not use many additional yeasts and use a lot of the yeasts that are just here within the winery. Very light filtration, if at all, hardly any sulfites. So it's a kind of a blurred line between what's the naturals. Our naturals tend to be 0-0, which means no sulfites, no yeast, no filtration. There's a big range of what you're allowed to do for natural wines, but we tend with the natural ones to stick as close to totally natural as we possibly can. So we also have two different kinds of a reserva, which are the wines that we make with purely our own grapes. One is the traditional process, and the other one is a natural. So those are our 4 black label wines. And yes, they're available in the States. In fact, we just started working with Beso Imports, who are based in the Pacific Northwest, and they've got the ability to sell the wines online, I think, to 43 states now. So whereas we were very limited in where we could sell the wines in the States, we've been in Rick Bayless's restaurants for many, many years in the Chicago area. We've been in Cosme and Atla in New York since they opened. We've been in many places in California, including now Enrique's new places that he's opening in California. In fact, the woman who's in charge of the new place that's called Damian is coming here on Saturday to select the wines for their next order. And also we're in Nevada and one other state, and I can't remember which, I'm sorry. But now we're going to have the ability to sell to individuals in 43 different states. So we're very excited about that. We don't have everything there at the moment, but we have all of our natural wines. We have Big Blend, which has always been our standout, most well-known and loved year for year wine. We have the Cabernet, we have the Tempranillo. I think we have the Method Champenoise, the Methods Traditionnelle of our sparkling wine. We do Pet Nats. I don't think they have Pet Nats.
You have such a quite a palette of products. Yes. You have like almost like 30 or something like that, different labels.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Not all, as I said, available in the States, but a lot more coming online that we've had in the past. I neglected to mention Sauvignon Blanc, which
I love your Sauvignon Blanc.
Thank you.
That Sauvignon Blanc, I tasted it last year and I loved it. I love this one. This Phil blend is a very nice wine, my friends. Very nice. It's a lovely wine, Phil. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Lovely one. And you sent me another bottle. It's called Mezcla Especial. I think that's one of your favorite wines.
Yes, it is. This is a wine which I first made specifically only for Enrique Olvera's restaurant Cosme in New York when it opened a few years ago. And since then, I've made a number of wines for him and for his group. And we don't sell this one in Cosme anymore. We do sell a new one every year. But this one I love so much that we continue to make it here. And now it's become part of our black label. It's a blend of 5 different grapes. It's Tempranillo, Grenache. I'm sorry, it's 4 only, 4 grapes. It's a blend of 4 different grapes. It's Tempranillo, Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvèdre. And It's been one of my favorites each year since I started to make it. My favorites change every year, and also they change during the year. Each wine, especially the reds, develops at a different rate, and perhaps every 3 months I have a new favorite, but don't tell that to this wine.
One of the things about the wines is that
he's going to be jealous that Mezcla Especial is better than Phil's blend.
Well, one of the things about the wines is that what we normally find is that just when the wines are absolutely amazing, we open a bottle and sort of kudos to Phil. That's when it's finished. We don't have any left. So it's a
I heard a story. I don't know who. Somebody told me that you sold all your cases and you just kept 1 or 2 or maybe 12 bottles, and then you said, "Oh my God, why did I sell everything? I didn't left any wines for me in my storage."
Yes, that's the Mezcla Especial.
But Phil doesn't really like selling his wines.
Yeah.
I think
always happens.
The reasons so much wine so that he can sell it and not have to feel bad about not having it.
And I heard also you feel you're now making some natural wines and this in this old process without sulfites and everything. So very common, and that you're very satisfied with the results of your process.
Yes, we were quite surprised that we make a number of different wines. We make quite a range of maybe 8 or 10 natural wines. I'm afraid I don't really remember. We made so many wines last year that I kind of lost count. But we love to make the natural wines. I wanted to make wines which bore some taste relationship with the normal wines. That is, the wines with sulfites and they are filtered, it's stabilized. I wanted my natural wines to have a relationship with them, but the process be even more natural than usual, actually totally natural. As Eileen said, our natural wines are natural. What I did not want was a very unusual taste in those natural wines. And we got lucky. We don't make funky natural wines. We actually like them a lot. We make a lot more. We have some wines that were natural for many years. We never really spoke about it. For instance, the sparkling wine, we switched that from being almost natural to natural. We make an orange wine, which it doesn't have to be natural, but it is. It's always been entirely natural. It's 100% Chardonnay. We call it Vino Ambar, but those kind of wines are known as orange wines in English. Very, very traditional processes. And that, as usual, was a suggestion that Eileen made. She has really good ideas. And years ago, she said, we should make more natural wines. And years ago, she said, we should make orange wines. Why don't we try that? And I decided to just do the orange wine that she suggested and make it natural as well. That one, honestly, I think I might have made more of that than any other wine this year. We've made a lot. We love it, and that's been really, really popular. So each year now we make more and more natural wines. Very often we try to put aside a small quantity of everything we make. If the grapes are suitable for making natural wines, then very often we just make some of it natural. We've been having a lot of fun doing that.
and with your artistic and scientific methods, we can say that Benacaba has very different types of wine, and also with different methods. You use barrels from first use, second use, third use. You use concrete and you use stainless steel, and you use also wood for the fermentation process. So we can expect different tastes, different kind of wines.
Yes, and we're doing more and more experiments like that. Last year, for instance, we made the orange wine, not only with Chardonnay, but another one with Sauvignon Blanc and another one with Chenin Blanc. This year, we decided to make it with only Chardonnay. But the process, as usual, involved making some of it in concrete, some of it in wooden barrels, larger than these, more convenient, and some of it in tanks. And we had a tasting about 4 or 5 days ago now, because we were just getting ready to put that wine, to clean up the liquid, to separate it from all of the solids it gets fermented with, the seeds and the stems, that kind of thing. And as we separated it, we kept the wines from concrete, from stainless steel, from tanks and wood, the oak barrels, we kept them separate. And we tasted some of the wine before we put it away to leave it to age for 4 months. And there are great differences between the orange wine from concrete, the orange wine from tanks, and the orange wine from oak. But we usually love to blend them together. This year we will. But the differences were very, very obvious. But as usual, we got lucky, and mixing all three together, you get something which is much more than the sum of the 3 parts. The concrete, the wood, and the tank. It's much more. And we love to work like that. Very many of our wines are made like that, making lots of versions and then choosing which of those versions we blend together. It's the same with these red wines that we're talking about today. It's similar, but to a lesser extent with whites, and to a greater extent with something like the amber, the orange wine. And we love to play. We do play here. Eileen mentioned
you play, yes, I know. And my friends, I think that's all this explanation how Phil makes his wines is no excuse to go to Benacaba and try them in this wonderful winery that Phil has a little down on the mountain, where he keeps all his wines and his secrets. And do you expect, how many visitors can expect? You have a little restaurant also, Eileen, where people can have lunch and drink the wine beside the nice lake that you have built, right?
Yes, absolutely. So before the pandemic, we would often have 200 visitors a day on the weekends. And now we're very strict. We are open, but very strict regulations. We don't allow more than 10 people in the tasting room at a time. We have a really pretty little courtyard with a little fountain that's in between our 2 tasting rooms, this being the original one, and there's another one. And in that courtyard, which is outside, that's where we tend to try and do most of the tasting, so that everybody's outside. And then Troika, which is kind of a gastro pub, gourmet food truck, so to speak, is really pretty on a lake. We've got ducks. It's right outside the winery. We have done tastings there. We're about to do flights, which would be pairing flights of wines with cheeses or tapas. So it's an experience. It's not just the wine on its own or the food on its own, but recommendations of pairing particular food and food groups with the wines. One of the things that we do here that has proven really successful was something that we always call blending in. And what we do is, we would do it for a much limited number of people now than what we've done it for in the past, but we do barrel tastings of 3 or 4 different varietals. Phil talks about each one of the different varietals and the process that was used to make the wine that's in the barrel. And then we give everybody the opportunity to make their own blends. So you make your own blend, and you get that at the end of the tasting. People love that, and it's amazing how great it's a great experience.
It's a wonderful experience. I mean, I cannot imagine to be with Phil and make our own blends and everything and have the lunch at this beautiful place. Do you have to make a reservation? The webpage of Benacaba is benacabawines.com. You can find it in the internet very easy. And I mean, you have to make a reservation. Phil, do I have to make a phone call and make a reservation to taste the wines with you?
You don't know that, well, but yes, just make the phone call. But in general, I'm a little bit old-fashioned, and I would probably make a phone call. I think that people tend to do this kind of thing online. But yes, because of the security precautions we're having to take to defend ourselves from the virus during this pandemic, you really need a reservation. Sometimes if people call at the last minute, we can fit them in. But right now, of course, we have a guard on the gate. He takes your temperature. You need a reservation. We're trying to have very small numbers of people here, just for the safety of everyone, for our guests, for ourselves, and for the people who work here for us receiving the guests. So a reservation is very important at the moment, yes.
We have had people on weekends just turning up, and if we can accommodate them, we do, but often we can't, and kind of hate turning people away. Obviously, for us, it's bad to have to turn
Okay,
people
but during the situation of the coronavirus, I think that these measures are perfect and should be placed because of our safety, for everybody's safety.
Definitely.
So, my friends, don't be afraid. Phil and Eileen have all the measures that, to be safe in their environment. And I have also mine. The problem with this, my dear Phil, is that I cannot taste the wine at the same time. I maybe need a straw and then drink it like this. So I'm very glad that you have all these measures. So my friends, don't be afraid to visit Venacaba. It's very easy to arrive at Venacaba. You must drive from San Diego to Tijuana, then drive 100 kilometers. It's an hour drive to Ensenada, then turn left. Well, it's a U-turn, turn left to the east to Valle de Guadalupe. And when you arrive there, turn left again, and you will see the signs Venacaba. There's a dirt road going up in the mountain, a little mountain, and up on the hill, there's this beautiful house, Tuscan style. It's a Tuscany Italian style with 6 rooms where you can offer your breakfast and you can dine and drink the wines with your visitors, right?
Correct. And I should just point out that a lot of the offerings are now back in operation. It was, everyone was totally closed for several months, but in the last month, the government has given us permission to open following the guidelines that we've just been talking about. And we've gotten certification clean and safe for every facet of what we do here. And a number of our colleagues have done as well. So there's a lot to see and do here now, and less crowds. I think it's a great time to be here, to be honest.
Yeah. Yes, now because less crowd, that means you can have Phil and Eileen for yourself. Go to the cozy living room, drink a couple of wines. You will be in this beautiful environment. And Eileen, I heard also that you are making some art and you are building like some art thing, museum, explaining a little bit of Mexican art. Is that right?
Yes, we have, our property is about 70 acres, and apart from the vineyards and the hotel and the restaurant and the winery, there's a back, kind of like the back 40, I suppose, but it's not 40, maybe 30. There's a part of the hotel that we've kind of vowed that we would not build on at all. When I say the hotel, what I mean is the property. So what we've done is to turn that into, and it's in its very nascent stages, unfortunately, because we started last year. We had 3 artists come, all 3 women, all 3 Mexican, and very well known. In fact, one just had her own exhibition at the Guggenheim, and they did 3 big sculptural pieces for us. And we've got a kind of an art walk now. We were meant to have another artist who was supposed to come in May, and then another artist that was supposed to come at the end of June, the beginning of July. Obviously, that wasn't able to happen, but we're hoping to reinitiate next year. The idea that we created this for was to have a space that was open to the public, that would not interfere at all with the private nature of the hotel and the swimming pool and the jacuzzi, but a space where people could walk within the totally unspoiled countryside that's part of our land and really appreciate the art. So we're actually now thinking of incorporating within that space kind of a botanical garden that will be an educational garden where we'll have classes for kids, and we'll plant all native plants, and we'll talk about the insects, the flora, the fauna. So that's part of that space we're hoping to dedicate to that as well. And
so you are kids friendly, you have art, you have wine, you have scenery, you have a swimming pool, you have a wonderful bed and breakfast, a cozy living room, a extraordinary view. What else can we expect from Venacaba Winery? I mean,
so this is Baja Botanicas. So we have or had around 4,000 lavender plants, of course organic as well. And with those plants, we make essential oil. And these are 100% organic, of the highest quality ingredients. And it's a range of body care products. It's shampoo, conditioner, shower gel, hand soap, body lotion. We do really lovely candles.
There's no excuse. Everybody should visit Venacaba. Try everything what Eileen and Phil are doing. My goodness. I mean, you are making a huge industry.
We're a lot of little cottage industries.
It's a beautiful piece of land. It's a beautiful hotel. And really talk and taste wines with Phil. It's a wonderful experience that nobody should miss.
Thank you. Well,
you're very kind.
Well, we hope to see you Arturo, and you, the viewer.
Yes.
Very soon.
I will do. Now, dear friends of the Mexican Wine Guide, this is Phil and Eileen from Venacaba Winery. Do you want to say something else?
I just want to say that we do love to receive people here, friends, guests, they're often the same thing, and we miss everyone. Of course, it's very difficult to travel now. Eileen and I certainly have no intention of traveling very far, but luckily we live in this wonderful place, and we'd like to share it with you on the limited basis that's available to us. We do have a safe environment for you to come and hang out at Troika, the food truck, and especially at the winery. Our wines are available for you to try in the safety of your own home for those who don't want to travel. But in sometime in the future, we hope to see many of you here.
So if you live in any of the states that I mentioned, then you can purchase our wines through LMA Wines. They're in California, and if you live in California, they arrive the next day, and if you live out of California, a couple of days. Anywhere, if you're interested specifically in natural wines, then I encourage you to contact Patrick from Beso Imports up in the Pacific Northwest, and we'll have more information on that in the coming days. We've literally just started with him, but we're very excited about that. And also, we have a new wine club that we've just started, and that is a kind of subscription, and it enables you to buy wines that are limited editions that you wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. Also special tastings, special events like that blending in, and other wine pairing dinners. There's a host of benefits for members of the wine club.
Beautiful. I think really, and I will try to say it again, there is no excuse not to visit Venacaba and try these wonderful wines and have a little chat with Phil and Eileen. Eileen, thank you very much. I really miss you. Phil, I miss trying wines with you and sit on your wonderful living room.
We miss you, and Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
organizing this. You're very kind.
I thank you very much, and cheers with Mexican wines. See you
Cheers.
soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.